Welcome back to the Bitesize QI Essentials videos. My name is Sid Beach. I'm the Quality Improvement Training Lead at CLCH, and this video focuses on selecting changes. Now, my aim for this session is to introduce you to the concept of sustainable change ideas, at least very broadly. And what I'd like for you to take away from this video is to understand and be aware of the fact that some change ideas are more likely to stick, are more likely to be embedded and sustained than others, and to think about that when planning your improvement projects or improvement ideas. So just to recap, this is the model for improvement. On the left-hand side, it asks 3 key questions, and that's then followed through by a plan, do, study, act cycle. Now, this video focuses on that third and final question of the model for improvement, which is highlighted there. What change can we make that will result in improvement? In other words, what ideas, what hunches do you have in order to improve? Now, as said by the IHI, or the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, whilst all change does not lead to improvement, all improvement requires change. And that's a very important and simple philosophy to maintain. We do need to change things if we want to improve. Often you'll have a very good idea of what you want to do in order to improve, but if you don't, that's okay. Speak to your patients, speak to their carers and relatives, and speak to your colleagues, because often between you, you'll be able to find something that together you can pinpoint in order to improve. Now, jumping into selecting sustainable change, let's say that you've come up with a few different ideas for improvement and you're not sure which one to test first. I find this thing on the screen here, which is known as the hierarchy of intervention effectiveness, is a really helpful tool to select the best change in terms of sustainability, in terms of making sure that it lasts in the long term. So it sounds more complicated than it is, but in essence, what it's saying is that there are 2 key types of change: people-focused change and system-focused change. And that system-focused change is more likely to stick. It's more likely to be sustainable and more effective in the long term than people-focused change. So what do I mean by people-focused change and system-focused change? If you look at the diagram on the screen, there are 3 different types of people-focused change. The first and least effective is education and training. So that's not to say that education and training doesn't work, because of course it does, but it's not the most viable option for improvement, because as the workforce is ever changing, as people move roles and new people join the organisation, it's difficult to sustain and maintain that. Rules and policies, again, a people-focused change. Introducing rules may not mean that people stick to them. And the same goes for reminders, checklists and double checks. Again, not to say that these don't work. For example, the WHO or the WHO checklist for safer surgery has been a very effective intervention at improving safety in the theatre, in operating theatres, but not all double checks and checklists work. So they're people-focused change: education and training, rules and policies, and reminders, checklists and double checks. What are system-focused changes? So in this hierarchy, there are 3 different types of system-focused change. Making things simpler and making things consistent is one of the ways that we can improve the system. So they're not focused on the people, they're focused on the process and focused on the system, making it simpler and easier for people to do and making it standardized. The next is to automate it. So if something does it by itself as opposed to asking someone to do it, so if you enter data onto an IT system and it then auto-populates another one, that's a much simpler way of improving things and making things safer. And then the final one is forcing functions, which are making sure that someone has to do something before they can proceed. So making sure that something is done before they can continue to the next step. This is the hierarchy of intervention effectiveness. It's a very simple tool to help you to decide which are the best ideas to take forward, perhaps thinking about system-focused change over people-focused change, or if you're introducing people-focused change, making sure that you link that in with the system and the process. Another tool that I like to use when designing ideas and selecting the best changes is shown on the screen here. It's the sustainability model, which is designed by the NHS for the NHS. And all I'm going to say about this for now, because there will be a video on this for you to watch, is that we need to consider the organisation, the staff that work in the organisation, and the process as one one entity when selecting changes. So do we have the people on side, the senior leaders, the clinical leaders? Do we have the wider team on side? Do we have an adaptable and flexible process that can change with the ever-changing dynamics of healthcare? And does the change fit with the needs of the organisation? I would encourage you to look at this tool when selecting changes. And like I said, there is a video on this if you are interested. So I very quickly got some top tips for you when selecting changes. The first is, if you are struggling to come up with an idea, or even if you aren't, please speak with your patients and their carers, because they will have often very good ideas of how to improve, because of course they are experiencing their own care above anyone else. So please speak to patients and their carers. Sometimes they may have very different perspectives than healthcare professionals, and that could be really useful. Similarly, many of your colleagues will have an idea of what could be improved. So if you haven't got an idea, or even if you have, please discuss it with your colleagues so that you can work together on the best ideas to take forward. Learn from other work as well. So there are loads of good examples of quality improvement in CLCH and across the wider NHS. So speak to the QI team, because they will be able to share knowledge of what's worked in the past and what hasn't, so that you can take the best ideas forward. Sometimes it's useful to get a quick win in, so something that can be quickly and easily fixed to improve care, and then get those out to the way before working on the more challenging topics. And if you're struggling to come up with any other ideas after speaking to patients and your colleagues, looking at other work, then perhaps a good place to start would be to look at any clinical incidents or adverse events or near misses that have happened in your work area, because often there'll be some ideas for improvement from the investigations that have happened around those. So that's the selecting changes in a nutshell. Next step is for you to watch the Plan, Do, Study, Act video, looking at how we test changes using the model for improvement.